So when I started my video blog, it was to introduce Taiwan to non-Chinese speaking people living in Taiwan as well as living abroad. And now it's kind of evolved into a one-stop information spot because I do topics relating to tourism, to immigration, to where you can buy a camera and how to prepare for a typhoon. I also want to add a new category on my video blog called Places Around Taiwan, or maybe places that you can fly to within 4 hours of Taiwan. I've already done some clips on Japan and also on Thailand. I want to add Hong Kong to that, Macau, Philippines, possibly also Singapore and even Palau very soon. Now that being said, last year, September 2012, I went to North America for the first time and I had an absolutely fantastic time in America. So I somehow want to share that on my video blog as well. Now I know that's not related to We View Taiwan, and I know it's not even related to the category of places around Taiwan, the new category, but I still feel like I want to share this experience. So I've put together a couple of clips with highlights of my trip to North America. So basically I did like a smiley face around the southern states in the United States, but I did start my trip in Calgary, Canada. Now, as a South African, unfortunately, I need a visa for just about every place I go to, including the US and Canada. Now, the US wasn't a big deal. I mean, they had a consulate here at the time, so I went there, I made the application, and I got a 10-year visa. The Canadian visa, however, was an absolute nightmare. Basically, you have to put your passport in an envelope and send it to a PO box address in Hong Kong. And there's no way to check the process. So essentially, you're just sending your passport into the abyss and hoping for the best. Now, on the website, it said it takes about 7 to 14 days to process the visa. Mine took about 30 days. So I got mine back literally 2 days before my flight to Canada. And the problem is I had a transit in Japan, and in Japan I had to go from Haneda Airport to the other one, Narita Airport, which means I actually had to leave the airport, which means I had to get a Japanese visa as well. So now it's 2 days before my Canada flight, basically. So I had to rush to the Japanese consulate and apply for this Japanese visa as well. So literally the day that I flew to Canada, I went to the Japanese consulate to pick up my passport on the way to the airport to catch that flight. Needless to say, this was probably one of the most stressful experiences I've had in my life, and definitely not an ideal way to start a trip. However, I was on my way to Calgary, Canada during Stampede, and I went there to see really, really good friends. And let me just add, Stampede is probably one of the best party experiences I've had in my life. If it's not on your bucket list, you really should put it on your bucket list. So in the first clip, I'm going to show you bits and pieces of stuff I took while I was in Calgary and during Stampede. Now keep in mind, I didn't take this camera with me when I went to the United States. I actually took just like a little Sony camera. So the video is not going to be great quality and it's going to be quite shaky. Okay, so from Calgary, Stampede, I flew to the United States. Now, Calgary Airport actually has its own section for immigrations to the US. Now, I have to tell you, I have kind of bad luck with immigrations and customs. I don't know if I look like a suspicious person or something, but I usually get interviewed and I always get searched. So I was kind of nervous for US immigrations because I've heard kind of nightmare stories about US immigrations. In addition, I kind of went out the night before and had a hell of a last night Stampede party. So I was nursing an evil hangover. And the immigration line was literally like 2 hours long, and I forgot to take water. So by the time I got to the front of the immigration line, I was in no mood to play games. Luckily, I got probably the nicest, friendliest immigration officer ever. So I had absolutely no problems at immigration. In fact, that very much was the theme throughout my trip. I didn't have any problems whatsoever. I had a very pleasant experience actually at airports in the US. So that was really good. So my first stop, the first time I actually set foot on American soil, was in fact in Alabama. Now, people laugh when I say that. I think Alabama is a very underestimated state in the US. Now, granted, I did go there to see a really good friend, but I had an absolute blast in Alabama. So in my next clip, I'm going to show you some highlights of my trip and my time in Alabama. Then from Alabama, I flew to Texas, Austin. And again, I was visiting really good friends, so I had an absolute blast. But as any respectable person will tell you, if you go to Texas, you have to go tubing. So in my next clip, I'm going to show you my pal CJ and I tubing in Texas. From Texas, I flew to Phoenix, Arizona. And about an hour after my flight touched down, there was a huge sandstorm. And the next day, there was another sandstorm, a lot like what you see on that movie, The Mummy, a lot like that. On the second or third day, we drove up to Sedona. And when we got there, there was a huge hailstorm. Now, I think this was kind of just nature welcoming me to Arizona or something like that. Again, I was with some really good friends. So we drove all the way up to the Grand Canyon, which it just blew my mind. I mean, I was sitting looking at this canyon and trying to get my eyes to adjust to the distance and depth, but it just didn't happen. The place is just enormous. It's just absolutely amazing. In fact, I'm hoping to go back there and do like a river raft or something inside the canyon. So in the next clip, I'm going to show you some highlights of Phoenix, Arizona, as well as Sedona and the Grand Canyon. My last stop in the US was in LA and Vegas. And the term "what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas" it makes a lot more sense to me now. So I'm going to show you some highlights of LA, and if I can find some PG rated clips of Vegas, I'll show you some clips of Vegas as well.